One of the coolest things about Chicago is its 18 and a half miles of beautiful lakefront property, which is open to the public. However, in order to get to that beautiful lakefront property, one has to cross an 8-lane highway that goes by the name of DuSable Lake Shore Drive. You may know it from movies like When Harry Met Sally or Ferris Bueller's Day Off, as Lakeshore Drive provides very scenic, establishing shots of Chicago. However, that's pretty much the only good thing about Lakeshore Drive. Many people will say that it improves north south transit times, but I find it hard to believe that a well planned public transit solution would be any worse. But anyway, let's get into why Lakeshore Drive is an absolute abomination. If you feel the desire to, I don't know, actually get to the lake, you have to cross this highway. Lakeshore Drive is about 16 miles long and it has exactly 22 crossings that are open to pedestrians. So there's on average about 3/4 of a mile between each spot that you as a pedestrian or cyclist can physically get to the lake. For scale, this is how far 3/4 of a mile is. So you can live in an apartment building on Lakeshore Drive and have to walk for about 15 minutes to get the 150 feet across the street. If that's not bad enough, let's look at how you can get across the street. Take, for example, these dank tunnels that I've personally seen at least twice get fully flooded, not to mention the fact that some of them aren't bike or wheelchair accessible. You can also go 15 feet into the air on pedestrian bridges where you can feel the vibrations from the Ram 1500s below. But those aren't even the worst ones, because at those crossings, you can cross to the other side whenever you want. In contrast, there are sections where there are stoplights, the worst of which I clocked at 3.5 minutes to cross if you get there at the wrong time. And a significant portion of the time I've crossed at one of these spots, there's a huge bunch up of cars in the intersection when their light goes red. So basically, you're weaving through 4 lanes of stationary cars that are in your crosswalk, and you're just praying that the drivers pay attention before pushing forward when the traffic in front of them moves. The curb radii at these sections are pretty ridiculous, and people routinely take their right turns at very high speeds. The 130-foot crosswalks are ridiculous enough, but they are especially ridiculous when you look at the pedestrian signals. Some of these crosswalks are so long that they're broken into 2 sections with an island in the middle. So if you run out of time to cross halfway through, you're basically stuck in the median of a highway for several minutes, which is lots of fun. To further drive home the point of how dangerous this is, I was very nearly hit at one of these because the signals work differently than most others that exist in Chicago. In most of the city, pedestrians are given several seconds of grace period after the walking man signal goes to the orange hand. At spots on Wacker Drive, I've counted something like 12 seconds that you get in case you misjudged how fast you can walk, and this seems reasonable given how wide Wacker Drive is. However, on Lakeshore Drive, you're given 0 seconds of grace period, and then the drivers shoot off the starting line like they're at NASCAR. Unsuspecting pedestrians such as myself might assume that a generous grace period would be given on some of the widest pedestrian crossings in the city, and yet there isn't one at all. And that segues very nicely into overall traffic fatality statistics. An independent researcher looked at traffic accidents in and around the totality of Lakeshore Drive and found an average of about 8 crashes and 2 injuries per day related to Lakeshore Drive, with an average of about 12 deaths per year between 2019 and 2023. For context, a 2021 study on NHTSA data tabulating the 25 most dangerous highways in America put the most dangerous highway at 1.134 fatalities per mile of highway per year. Since Lakeshore Drive is 15.8 miles, this puts Lakeshore Drive at about 0.75 deaths per mile per year, which would put it at number 4 on that list of most dangerous highways in the country. I wouldn't put 100% faith in these numbers, and I didn't do an independent analysis, but a top 10 spot in America's most dangerous roadways list is pretty shocking. So if pedestrian and cyclist inconvenience as well as danger to residents isn't enough for you, let's talk about noise. Actually, let's listen to the noise. Isn't that nice? There are many places where, as a pedestrian or cyclist, you're basically right up against highway traffic, and it is very loud, especially when you get those very enjoyable 100 decibel Ducatis. There are times near the lake when, for whatever reason, the traffic noise vanishes for a second, and you realize just how loud it all is, and how nice it would be if the sound wasn't there all the time. So now that I've successfully convinced you that Lakeshore Drive sucks, what is being done about it? And the short answer is probably nothing. There is an organization by the name of Redefine the Drive, which got me excited because I thought, oh, finally, they're going to fix all the problems with Lakeshore Drive. Not so fast. Basically, this organization exists because some of the road infrastructure is about 100 years old and they need to replace it anyway. And critically, they're only looking at the north side, from Navy Pier to the very northernmost tip at Hollywood Avenue, because God forbid we do anything to benefit the south side. But anyway, what exactly is their plan? Well, they want to basically keep everything exactly the same for drivers with their 4 lanes of traffic, of course, not giving any dedicated lanes to buses. Because you see, the Illinois Department of Transportation is pretty much in charge of Redefine the Drive, and IDOT's specialty is highways, not cities. So this part of the plan sucks. But in addition to this, they're planning to extend the coastline out a bunch, giving more green space for people walking and cycling farther away from the car traffic. And they want to create these extremely large, elaborate pedestrian platform bridges, which look sort of cool. And they plan to go from 22 to 27 total pedestrian crossings. So that all sounds great. It sounds like they want to make at least parts of the lakefront better for pedestrians and cyclists. But this plan seems very reminiscent of all of the mega projects that tend to be proposed in Chicago, like Lincoln Yards, the 78, and whatnot. They all start out very overblown and end up getting delayed massively if they ever get finished at all. My best guess is that they will end up slowly cutting down this proposal until they are basically just resurfacing Lakeshore Drive, and if we're lucky, they'll plant a few more trees here and there. I'd like to be more optimistic, but pretty much the only optimistic thing I can say is that the plan is not finalized yet. Thanks for watching.